Come on out to Mississauga, it's the greatest place around. Where on a quiet evening you can watch the sun go down. And if you should need a friend, there are plenty to be found. That's why everybody loves that good old Mississauga.
Hello, and thank you for joining us here on Ask a Historian. I'm Matthew Wilkinson, historian with Heritage Mississauga. Please send in your questions to history@heritagemississauga.org as we explore the fascinating stories of the City of Mississauga together here on this program. Like, subscribe, and follow us and stay up to date on all the heritage happenings with Heritage Mississauga. As part of this program, we will be exploring memories, moments, and milestones from the past 50 years with past and present civic leaders as part of the City of Mississauga's 50th anniversary. On this week's episode, we are excited to be joined by City of Mississauga Ward 11 Councillor Brad Butt as we explore his personal perspectives of moments and milestones from the City of Mississauga's 50th anniversary. So thank you, Councillor Butt, for joining us and taking the time here to explore some milestones and moments and memories from the 50th anniversary, not only the city, but also just your time here in the city and your memories that you'll wander down with us here. I'm wondering if you can just start with this. What are your connections to the city of Mississauga, and when did it become home to you?
Well, I've lived here basically my entire life, and I'll give you a little story in a minute, but it goes back really to my grandparents on both sides, who were Port Credit residents for many years. Both my parents, longtime residents of Mississauga as well, and I'm 57 now, but it was interesting. I actually was born in Ottawa. My father had been transferred in a sales job he had at the time, and my parents were living in Ottawa when my mother was pregnant with me, and I actually wound up being born there. But 6 months later, they were back to Mississauga, and I've lived in Mississauga ever since. They decided to come home because the family network was here, and my dad was able to start his real estate business with his father in Mississauga at that back in Port Credit on Lakeshore Road, and so I've spent most of my 57 years living in the city of Mississauga.
So you're one of the ones that can talk about that transition, although you would have been a younger child there from Port Credit merging
Yeah, well,
the city.
7 years old, obviously, when it became the city of Mississauga. My father was a councillor in the last town of Port Credit Council, funny enough,
Yeah.
Before amalgamation. Of course, back in those days, both Port Credit and Streetsville were adamantly opposed to the creation of the city of Mississauga. So it made for some interesting times. But post amalgamation, I think everybody tried to work together to make the city of Mississauga work and work well. And I think it has over the last 50 years. We have much to be proud of.
And I know I'm going to be reaching out to your dad as well about the memories here, but talk about a lifetime of experience here with, Port Credit, town of Mississauga, Toronto Township. Here we are into the city of Mississauga, and 50 years later, it's a neat family link that you have that bridges these times. And so, some of what are some of your memories of growing up? I know Port Credit was home, but all part of the city of Mississauga today. Some of your earliest memories of this thing that became Mississauga.
Well, I remember because my dad also did serve for one term on the new City of Mississauga Council from 76 to 78, 1976, 1978. And I remember him taking me to the old City Hall at
Right.
Center Drive, and going to his office or going to the old council chambers. But when you looked out the back window of City Hall northward on Hurontario Street, it was all farmland. I mean, there were cows wandering around. Square One was only an outdoor mall back then, not the massive, indoor mall that it is today. Burnethorpe Road and Hurontario Street and Dundas and others were nothing like they are today. They were rural to some degree. You probably make the argument. So just fascinating for someone like me now serving on our council to have seen that amazing growth coming from, I wouldn't say nothing, but really you had Port Credit and you had Cooksville and you had Streetsville, and then to see everything else kind of grow from there is fascinating. I mean, very few people in their lifetime would ever get to see a city built from something extremely small and in essence rural to the urban municipality that we have in Mississauga today.
It's incredible to think you just I know I've seen a great deal of change in your just to cope with the change or to understand that evolution of change is astounding. I can imagine what the commute must have been like back then versus what it is today coming up from Port Credit to City Hall.
Well, you know, my dad used to joke that in the early days we didn't call it Mississauga Transit, we called it Mississauga Chancet because I mean it was small and very few buses and only on maybe Ontario Dundas and a couple of other maybe arterial roadways. But other than that, we didn't have a transit network of anything to speak of in the 70s, until we started to build and grow and then have the population that required us to build a better and modern public transportation system that we see today. And then what we're seeing is the future now of what public transit is going to be with a light rail transit and improved GO train services, and of course other bus routes that are being improved over time. But even something like transit, nothing. Even something like our community infrastructure was small. I mean, I was a pool rat at West Acres School. West Acres Pool, rather. I went to West Acres School too, but
Okay.
West Acres Pool. And I mean, that was your summer activity. Like you walked in your bathing suit in your bare feet from your house to the pool, and that's what you did all summer long. I mean, that was your life, right? You didn't have electronic devices and computers and other fun stuff. That was your recreation all summer long. Was your mother kicked you out the house and you went to the pool. And there's some degree of some of that still happening with folks,
Yeah.
but I mean that was our life. That was it. It was simple. We just everybody played with everybody in the neighborhood. Everybody knew everybody else. Nobody's doors were locked. You could walk in the back door of anybody's house on any street and know your friends were going to be there. And
Yeah.
it was a lot of nice small community stuff
Yeah.
that I remember fondly growing up.
I was gonna say those the main street little shops and the restaurants and stuff on Port Credit must have been home for you as well, and just wandering down Lakeshore
Yeah,
Road.
Appwood Village Plaza was really my hangout
Okay.
spot
Yep.
because I grew up in Appwood in the Appwood Acres area of Mississauga. And yeah, I mean, you jumped on your bike or you walked or whatever, and you went down there. You hung out by the convenience store and bought a pack of gum and goofed around with your buddies. And it was fun times back then, and that's what we did. And then, as you know, when the street lights came on, it was time to go home.
We had the same. Ours were bike rides up the Credit River Valley, up the Cullum Trail, and there were no
Oh, that
parking.
would have
Like,
been neat.
yep.
Yeah, that would have been neat. Yeah.
No, it is astounding the change that we've seen in relatively a short period of time too. If you think of like the 50-year context of the city of Mississauga, I mean, here you are serving as councillor, and I know you've been at different levels of government over time, and Mississauga Board of Trade as well for a period of time. But in that time that you've been involved in representing your fellow residents, the change is enormous, right? Like it just
Oh, enormous. Oh, yeah, yeah. It's a significant change over 50. And to think about it, it's only been 50 years. You think about cities around the world, and how many hundreds and hundreds of years it took for them to evolve. I mean, we still have building and development that's going to happen in Mississauga. We still have infill, but for the most part, we've pretty much built out now. I mean, we don't have farmland or green land as we call it. They call the development industry. That it's gone. Like it's finished. So we're getting these pockets of infill now, and the push to increase density because in many ways, we need the population to be a successful modern city, no question about it. But at the same time, I think the important part, and one of the roles, of course, Heritage Mississauga plays and others is how do we make sure we protect and preserve the heritage aspects and these heritage districts and communities that have made Mississauga what it is today? How do we make sure we strike that right balance of protecting our history and our past, And also recognizing the fact that we need to continue moving forward as we build an even bigger and better city.
Right.
And that's been one of my passions. That's one of the reasons I ran for council and why I'm serving, as I think we need to get that right.
I was just saying you have a front seat on that as chair of the Heritage Advisory Committee as well, and it is a delicate balance because the city is facing all these pressures of growth as we should, and that drive for excellence. And I applaud you and your colleagues on council. That's always a challenge before you, is charting the course, if you will. How does a boy from Ottawa into Port Credit, raised in Applewood, become a councillor in Streetsville and Meadowvale?
Well, again, that's one of the great things about Mississauga is even though I didn't move very much, I mean, I had my family home in Applewood Acres, and then my wife and I bought our first home in Mineola East, and then we moved to Cooksville, and then from Cooksville I came to Streetsville, and so I haven't had a lot of moves in my life, but they've all been within Mississauga. And the great thing about Mississauga is that the communities are well connected, and we all tend to work together. But I mean, the neat thing about, again, the villages like Port Credit and Streetsville and Cooksville and Clarkson and even Malton and others is that great village history that they have, that you can still have that. I mean, Streetsville's motto is "Village in the City," right?
Yeah.
And so it's great that you can still have that village atmosphere, but then also have the benefits of being um, within a city. So how did I get where I got? I don't know. I know where it started. It started with me becoming a member, one of the inaugural members of the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee when Hazel McCallion set that up in 1982. And I was interested in the community and to some degree interested in politics as a 14-year-old kid. And Hazel invited some young people to come to the old City Hall at the time in 1982, and she formed a youth advisory committee. And she certainly had a tremendous influence in my decision to run for politics. I've run in several elections. Some you win, some you're not so lucky. And it is what it is. But I've always stayed involved in my community. I believe strongly you only get out what you put in. And whether it be on the volunteer side or now obviously as a full-time city and regional councillor, it's about trying to make our community a better place and a stronger place. And that's why I do what I do.
I was gonna say, and you must have had some guiding lights too. I imagine your dad was a good inspiration for public service for you as well.
Listen, for sure. Both my parents actively encouraged me to volunteer, to give back to the community, to be involved. I was always active. I don't remember, sitting around and doing nothing. It was either playing sports or being part of clubs or in the church or with other community organizations. And then when I got old enough that I could start to serve on boards of directors and committees, um, like starting with the Youth Advisory Committee, running to be president of the Student Council at Gordon Graydon Secondary School, which I was for both grade 12 and grade 13 years at that school, and then carrying on with many of the other organizations, including Heritage Mississauga and others that I have supported and volunteered with for decades, because I truly believe in the importance of those community organizations and what they add to the vibrancy of this city. So it's just, yes, it was instilled in me. My father, many others that encouraged me to be interested in politics, to put my name on a ballot, and to serve in public office.
I, kudos to you, because I know it's sometimes a leap of faith a little bit to put your name out there and stand for look to represent your city. So thank you for doing that. A good segue though. You just mentioned a couple of the organizations you're with. I know you've been involved with many for a long period of time. Can you give a shout out, perhaps some of the ones that perhaps have a long standing place in your heart for what they brought to the city?
Sure. I mean, I've served on the board of the Arts Council, the Sports Council, Food Bank. Well, it's now Food Banks Mississauga, but the Mississauga Food Bank was
Yep.
on their board for many years. I was the founding chair of Safe City Mississauga, which is our crime prevention association, and now, funny enough, back as a board member as a counselor. So what comes around goes around, I guess. And dozens of other organizations I can think of over the years. Here we are doing a bit of a video thing. For 15 years, I was a volunteer that hosted and produced a TV show on what was the old Rogers Community TV,
Yep.
which I thoroughly enjoyed and gave me an opportunity to hear directly from people on issues that they were interested in our city and interviewing some of the major players in public service that were making decisions that affected our lives. I mean, that was great fun for many years. But I'm proud of all the organizations and all the great work, and I've met hundreds and hundreds of fabulous volunteers over all that time, and some of them still in touch with when I worked with them. Like I was reminding somebody the other day that when I first met Councillor Carolyn Parrish, as an example, I was 16 years old as a member of the Counteract Vandalism Prevention Committee. That was 40 years ago. And here I am serving on a council. Well, she's not there right at this moment,
Yep.
but there I am serving, with someone who I started volunteering with 40 years ago. So I think about dozens and dozens of volunteers that I've known for decades in this city, and it's just been a great honor and privilege to work with all of them.
Oh, I hear you on that. And as I also go back over 40 years with Carolyn Parrish because I went to school at Froebel with her daughter.
Oh my goodness. Well, there you are. Yeah, I thought you were going to say Woodlands or something. So
No,
that's
this is my
there.
elementary first
Boy, oh
years.
yeah, in Arundel Village. Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
yeah. So can you point to some of the people that have really, in your mind, had a positive impact on kind of the development of the city, your perspectives on the city, kind of those people that are that old saying, if we see farther than most, it's because we stood on the shoulders of giants, right? So, who are some of those giants that really kind of positively impacted the city for you?
Well, obviously, the number one is the matriarch of our city, Hazel McCallion. I mean, there's no question that she built a city. I'm not single-handedly, but I mean, she provided that dynamic leadership that Mississauga needed to move forward, to be bold, to address development and related issues. And we built a truly great city. We're not without our warts. But at the end of the day, I think we have built a truly great city where you can live, work, play, retire, relax, and enjoy many aspects and great things, about the city. So, certainly I would say Hazel. I mean, from the private sector side, I mean, if you look at, city builders, I think of my good friend, Jim Murray. I think of, Bruce McLaughlin. I mean, who was the builder and founder, of Square One and the related. I mean, he created downtown Mississauga. I mean, basically Bruce McLaughlin was the guy that said it's going to be at here, Ontario, and Burnhamthorpe. And I think a lot of people thought downtown Mississauga was likely going to be Cooksville
Right.
at Dundas and Huron Street. Here was a guy saying, well, let's move it further north where there is green land and we can truly build a significant downtown core, where we would have been restricted at Huron, Ontario, and Dundas because there already were buildings there and some
Yeah.
of heritage nature, etc. So to have that bold vision to say, no, downtown Mississauga is going to be at Huron, Ontario, and Burnhamthorpe, which was Bruce McLaughlin, and then Ron Duquette worked for Bruce, and I think about people like that who are still giving back to Mississauga and part of being city builders. Harold Shipp and his father Gordon Shipp, of course, before also visionaries in looking at developing the city. I mean, other buildings. I mean, Iggy Caniff. You can think of. You can think of Mariana Lee, who was the master developer of the Credit Woodlands. Aaron Mills Development Corporation that did all the massive development of Aaron Mills. They were all the true city builders that made things happen in Mississauga to the city that we see today.
I just I love that you pull back to those, because those are the ones that, 50 years later, sometimes we forget those early years and that early vision. And I look at Bruce McLaughlin, and particularly through the work of Ron Duquette, as you mentioned, and just having the vision in the first place, right? Like you set the course, and yes, you got a steering hand at council, as we should. But yeah, no, just
And I'm sure back then people were rolling their eyes and doing this and what do you mean in the middle of a cow field and blah, like, are you kidding me? I can just imagine what people were saying, 50 plus years ago when this was all being envisioned. But we were fortunate that we had the political leadership and many members of council who worked with Hazel over all of those years that I can think of, that played a very significant role in all of this, and some of them served for many decades as members of council, and were there, and others that came to the table, but just a lot of great history and visionary, forward thinking, as to where we should be as a city, and of course here we are.
It is astounding, and now to have yourself witnessing it and now having steering hand in it, I just it's got to be a neat process for you as well to sit in the chair that you're now in and see the plans and the prognostications that come before you. Speaking of prognostication, we're not very good in the business of looking forward, but what the heck, we'll give it a shot. If you had to look forward, here we are, we're celebrating the 50th year of the City of Mississauga. We're looking back a lot over those 50 years, but if you had to look forward over the next 50 years for a city, do you have a hope for the future? Is there something you'd like to see come to be for Mississauga?
Yeah, I think I want to make sure that Mississauga continues to be a livable, uh, let's say, urban slash suburban environment. Mississauga is not going to be Toronto or New York City, and I don't think we want it to be. Toronto and New York City play their role, and people that want to live in those heavily urban environments, you know, have that choice. I think Mississauga's got that nice balance where if you go into our downtown core, which will continue to build up, you've got that very urban, high-rise downtown look and feel, and encouraging people to be more walkable and utilize public transit and other means, is a good thing. And that's smart, good urban planning. At the same time, you can have areas like my area of Streetsville and others where yeah, we're going to get a little bit more development going down the road. There's going to be more people living here. We're going to have that. But at the same time, can we make sure that we continue to have that balance that a lot of families want to see? They want to protect where we have our low-rise residential communities, and make sure that we continue to have those as great places where people can live and then be able to access community services and so on. I mean, you want people to be proud of neighborhoods that they live in, where they can feel, safe, and they can feel better about themselves and their neighborhood. At the same time, I think we've got some projects that would be great to see Mississauga try and pursue. I really would love to see us find a way to get a really significant multi-purpose stadium built somewhere in Mississauga for multiple sports. We've got certain types of sports that are growing exponentially right now, and I think of cricket and pickleball as being two of the main ones right now. Well, that stuff's not going away. Plus the traditional sports that people still love, whether it be basketball, baseball, soccer, football, hockey. We can go on and on, but we don't have a really good multi-purpose stadium. In a perfect world, I would love to see us have a decent convention center in downtown Mississauga. That would draw in tourism, that would draw in visitors, it would draw in business. I think it would be great for our downtown core if we could do something there. Now that will take some work, working with landowners and others in the area if it's actually possible, so that we build Mississauga as a bit of a destination point. Right. For certain things. I'm serving on the Tourism Mississauga board at the present time, and was one of the founding members of it when we envisioned creating a tourism board, because I think Mississauga's got stuff to offer. And I think in the future we may have more to offer. So let's be there. Let's be able to compete to get those world-class events to come to Mississauga and make us a strong destination point. We have a remarkable waterfront. What more can we do to look at better public utilization of our waterfront and access to it and recreation and other tourism related opportunities? I think we need to explore that more and look at it, including a significant public marina that I think after the federal lands are dealt with at the south end, we can take a look at. But how do we use our waterfront in a better way? So there's lots of great opportunities. We still have Pearson International Airport, which is a major hub for us and a major economic driver. So we've got to keep using that to our advantage and keep supporting our businesses. Because if you don't have employment opportunities, you're not going to have people living here either. So we have to keep supporting that as we move forward over the next 50 years.
I was going to say, but the continual juggling act, right? The move forward, but make sure your existing residences and neighborhoods are well cared for. And I imagine it's a never-ending circle in a sense.
Well, and it's like, and you and I know this, Matthew, from being on the Heritage Advisory Committee. It's that balance too of people may want to, do alterations or changes to heritage properties, and we know the reality of the world is those things are going to happen, and people have every right to apply to make those things happen. But how do you strike that balance? How do you make sure you work with that applicant to say, okay, we recognize you may want to do this, but look, work with us to make sure that we're preserving the look and feel and heritage value of that particular property or of that area of the municipality that we're trying to make sure that we continue to respect from a heritage conservation perspective. And most people are reasonable. That's been my experience over many years. But you need to work with them. And
Yeah.
it can't be unilateral one way or the other. We've got to sit down and try and balance those things out. Just like we talked about with development, it is a balancing act.
Yeah.
And I think Mississauga's got it right, generally speaking, in the past. And I'm confident we'll keep getting it right in the future.
Well, I applaud you, and I wish you all the best in terms of just that keeping that hand on the wheel as part of council. And I think from 1982 and then a 14-year-old on the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee to here we are 2024 and sitting on City Council representing Ward 11, and it's been quite the arc, and I imagine you're only still on the upswing of that arc. So I wish you all the best, and thank you for spending some time with us here and exploring some moments and milestones with our city's 50th anniversary, and wish you the best moving forward as well.
Thanks, Matthew. It was a great pleasure.
Thank you for spending some time with us here at Ask a Historian. And thank you also to Ward 11 Councillor Brad Butt for sharing moments and milestones with us from his perspective of the last 50 years here in the city of Mississauga. Like, subscribe, and follow us, and we will see you on future episodes of Ask a Historian here with Heritage Mississauga.